July 7th, 2009, the Staples Center in Los Angeles. 20,000 people have gathered for a public memorial. Millions more are watching on television. On the stage, a procession of speakers: Smokey Robinson, Barry Gordy, Brooke Shields, Usher, Mariah Carey. Each one steps to the podium. Each one shares a memory, a tribute, a farewell. But there is one person everyone expects to speak who does not: Elizabeth Taylor. She sits in the front row. Dark sunglasses, black clothing, silent. Cameras catch glimpses of her. She looks devastated, but she never approaches the microphone. She never says a word, and for 2 years, no one knows why. Then in 2011, a letter surfaces, written by Elizabeth Taylor herself. And in that letter, she explains not just why she could not speak, but what Michael Jackson's death meant to her, what their friendship had been, and why some losses are too deep for public performance. The letter is brief, but it reveals something the world had not fully understood. That silence sometimes is not absence. It is presence, the most painful kind. The friendship between Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson began in the 1980s. They were introduced at a dinner party. Both were at different stages of their careers. Taylor was in her 50s, a Hollywood legend, an icon who had survived decades of fame, scandal, marriage, divorce, addiction, and reinvention. Jackson was in his 20s, the biggest pop star in the world, fresh off the success of Thriller, still navigating what it meant to be that famous, that scrutinized, that isolated. They found common ground immediately, not in their work, but in their experience. Both had been child stars. Both had been consumed by fame before they understood what it meant. Both had been betrayed by people they trusted. Both had been vilified by the media, and both understood what it felt like to live in a fishbowl where privacy was a fantasy and every mistake was magnified. Their friendship was unusual. Taylor was old Hollywood, elegant, sharp-tongued, unapologetically herself. Jackson was shy, soft-spoken, uncomfortable with confrontation. But the differences did not matter. What mattered was the understanding. Taylor later said that Michael was one of the few people in her life who did not want anything from her. He did not need her fame. He had his own. He did not need her money. He had more. He did not need her connections. He was more connected than she was. What he needed was someone who understood, and she did. They spoke on the phone almost every day, late-night calls, sometimes lasting hours. They talked about everything: music, movies, books, animals, art. But mostly they talked about the weight of being who they were. Taylor had spent her entire life in the spotlight. She had been married 8 times. She had been mocked, celebrated, criticized, adored. She had survived near-death experiences, addiction, the loss of close friends to AIDS. She had lived a life that most people could not even imagine. And Jackson was heading down a similar path. The fame, the accusations, the media obsession, the inability to live a normal life. Taylor had already walked that road, and she tried to prepare him for what was coming. She defended him publicly. In 1993, when the first allegations emerged, Taylor was one of the few celebrities who stood by him without hesitation. She called the accusations garbage. She said Michael was being targeted because of his success, because of his difference. She appeared on television. She gave interviews. She put her reputation on the line, and she did it because she believed him. Not because she was naive, but because she knew him. She had spent years talking to him, watching him, understanding him, and she did not believe he was capable of what he was being accused of. But defending Michael came at a cost. Taylor was criticized. People questioned her judgment. They accused her of enabling, of being blinded by friendship. The media turned on her, but she did not care. She had been turned on before. She knew how the game worked, and she knew that Michael needed someone in his corner. Someone who would not abandon him when the accusations piled up. Someone who would not distance themselves to protect their own image. She was that person, and she remained that person until the end. In the years leading up to his death, their friendship deepened. Michael was struggling. financially, physically, emotionally. The 2005 trial had destroyed him. Even though he was acquitted, the damage was done. His reputation was in ruins. His body was breaking down. He could not sleep. He was in chronic pain. He was taking medication just to function. And he was preparing for a comeback. The This Is It tour. 50 shows in London. A chance to prove he still had it. A chance to reclaim his legacy. But he was not ready. His body was not ready. His mind was not ready. And Taylor knew it. She called him frequently in those final months. She urged him to slow down, to take care of himself, to cancel the tour if he needed to. But Michael would not listen. He felt obligated. He owed money. He had contracts. He had people depending on him. And he wanted to perform. It was the only thing that still made sense to him. The stage was the one place where he was still Michael Jackson, where he was not a defendant, not a tabloid headline, not a cautionary tale. He was an artist, and he needed that. Taylor understood. She had spent her own life performing, not just on screen, but in life, playing the role people expected, smiling when she wanted to scream, appearing strong when she was breaking. She knew what it meant to live for an audience, and she knew what it cost. She tried to warn Michael, but she also knew he would not stop, because people like them do not stop. They perform until they cannot anymore, and sometimes they perform past that point. On June 25, 2009, Elizabeth Taylor received the call. Michael was dead. The details were unclear, but the result was final. She was at her home in Bel Air. The news hit her like a physical blow. She had lost friends before. Rock Hudson, Montgomery Clift, Richard Burton. But Michael was different. Michael was supposed to outlive her. He was younger. He was supposed to have more time, more chances, more comebacks. But he was gone. And she was still here. She did not make a public statement immediately. She did not tweet. She did not call the press. She stayed silent. And people noticed. Elizabeth Taylor, who had defended Michael so loudly, had nothing to say. The media speculated. Was she angry? Was she in denial? Was she too devastated to speak? The truth was simpler. She was processing, and she was protecting herself, because she knew what would happen if she spoke. Every word would be analyzed, criticized, turned into a headline. And she did not have the energy for that. Not this time. The memorial service was held on July 7, 2009. 12 days after Michael's death. It was a massive event, broadcast live around the world, a who's who of the entertainment industry, producers, singers, actors, dancers, everyone who had ever worked with Michael or been influenced by him. The service was carefully choreographed. Each speaker had been selected. Each performance had been rehearsed. It was a tribute. But it was also a spectacle, and Elizabeth Taylor wanted no part of the spectacle. She attended. She sat in the front row, next to Michael's family. She wore sunglasses to hide her tears. She listened to the speeches. She watched the performances. But she did not speak, and when the service ended, she left quietly. No interviews, no statements, just silence. People were confused. Elizabeth Taylor, who had been Michael's most vocal defender, had said nothing. Not at the memorial, not in the days after. Not even a brief comment. It seemed wrong, incomplete. As if something essential was missing. But Elizabeth Taylor had her reasons, and 2 years later she explained them. In 2011, a letter she had written was made public. It was not addressed to the media. It was not a formal statement. It was a personal letter, written to a friend. But in that letter, she spoke about Michael's death, about why she had not spoken at the memorial, and about what his loss meant to her. The letter was heartbreaking, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. She wrote that she could not speak at the memorial because she could not find the words, that anything she said would have felt inadequate, performative, false. She wrote that Michael deserved better than a rehearsed eulogy delivered to cameras, that their friendship had been private, sacred, and that making it public, even in tribute, felt like a violation. She wrote that she had said goodbye to Michael in her own way, in private, in silence. And that was enough. She also wrote about the media. about how they had hounded Michael in life, and how they were exploiting his death. She wrote that she refused to participate in that she would not give them the satisfaction of a tearful speech that they could replay endlessly, that her grief was hers, not theirs, and that she owed them nothing. It was a defiant letter, but also a vulnerable one, because it revealed how deeply she was hurting, and how angry she was that Michael had been destroyed by the same forces that had nearly destroyed her. The letter changed the narrative. People who had questioned her silence understood. She was not indifferent. She was protective. She was not cold. She was devastated. And she was asserting a boundary. A line between public and private that she had learned over a lifetime in Hollywood was essential to survival. The letter also revealed something about celebrity grief, that it is not always loud, that it does not always perform well, that sometimes the people who loved someone the most are the ones who say the least, because their grief is too big for words, too personal for cameras. Elizabeth Taylor lived 2 more years after Michael's death. She died on March 23, 2011, at the age of 79. And when she died, Michael's family released a statement. They thanked her for her loyalty, for her friendship, for standing by Michael when others turned away. They said she had been like family, and that Michael had loved her deeply. The statement was brief, but it was sincere, because the relationship between Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson was not a Hollywood friendship. It was not strategic, it was not for show, it was real, and it endured because it was built on something deeper than fame. It was built on understanding. The question remains, why did Elizabeth Taylor not speak at the memorial? The simple answer is that she could not. The grief was too raw, the moment was too public. The performance was too much, but the deeper answer is that she chose not to. She chose to honor Michael in a different way, not with words spoken into microphones, but with silence, with presence, with loyalty that extended beyond the grave. She chose to protect their friendship from becoming another piece of content, another clip, another soundbite. She chose to keep something sacred in a world that makes nothing sacred. And in doing so, she said more than any speech could have. Because silence, when it comes from someone who has spent a lifetime speaking, is not empty. It is full. It is intentional. It is a statement. Elizabeth Taylor's silence at Michael Jackson's memorial was not an absence. It was a presence. The most powerful kind. It said, "This loss is mine. This grief is mine, and I will not perform it for you." Her letter, revealed after her own death, confirmed what many had suspected, that her silence was not coldness. It was love. The kind of love that does not need an audience. The kind of grief that cannot be packaged. The kind of friendship that endures even when one person is gone. Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson understood each other in ways most people never will. They lived lives that were extraordinary. Extraordinary in their highs. Extraordinary in their lows. And they found in each other a refuge. A place where they did not have to perform. Where they could just be. When Michael died, that refuge was gone. And Elizabeth Taylor, who had survived so much, could not survive that moment publicly. She could not stand at a podium and deliver a tribute, because tributes are for the audience, and her grief was not for the audience. It was for Michael and for herself. So she sat in silence, and she let others speak. And when the cameras turned away, she grieved in private, the way she had always grieved, the way she had learned to survive a lifetime of loss. The letter she wrote was not meant to be a public document, but it became one. And in becoming public, it gave people permission. Permission to grieve privately, permission to refuse to perform, permission to say no to the expectation that loss must be shared, that pain must be visible, that love must be spoken. Elizabeth Taylor's silence was a gift, not just to Michael, but to anyone who has ever felt that their grief was too big for words, too personal for strangers. In the years since her death, the letter has been analyzed. Scholars have written about it. Fans have quoted it. It has been cited as an example of authentic grief in a world of performative mourning. But the most important thing about the letter is not what it says. It is what it does not say. It does not explain. It does not justify. It does not apologize. It simply states, "This is how I grieved. This is what I chose, and this is what our friendship meant to me. It is a document of honesty in a world that rewards dishonesty, a document of restraint in a world that rewards excess. Elizabeth Taylor could have spoken at the memorial. She could have delivered a moving tribute. She could have cried on camera. She could have given the world what it wanted, but she chose not to, because she knew that what the world wanted was not what Michael deserved, and she knew that her grief was hers, not theirs. It was an act of defiance and an act of love, both at once. Michael Jackson's memorial was watched by millions. It was a historic event. But the most memorable moment for many was not a speech. It was a silence. The silence of the woman in the front row. The woman in dark sunglasses. The woman who had defended him when no one else would. The woman who loved him when loving him was costly. Elizabeth Taylor's silence spoke louder than any eulogy, and her letter, revealed years later, confirmed what that silence had always meant. I loved you. I miss you, and I will not cheapen that by performing it for strangers. There is a lesson in this story, a lesson about friendship, about loyalty, about the difference between public and private, about the cost of fame, and about the price of authenticity. Elizabeth Taylor and Michael Jackson lived in a world that demanded everything from them: their talent, their beauty, their time, their pain, their joy, everything. And they gave it. For decades, they gave it. But in the end, Elizabeth Taylor drew a line. She said, "This one thing is mine. This grief, this loss, this love. You cannot have it." And in drawing that line, she did something radical. She kept something human in a world that turns everything into product. The 2011 letter is now part of Elizabeth Taylor's archive. It sits alongside her other correspondence, her awards, her photographs, a small piece of paper with a few hundred words. But those words matter, because they tell a story that the memorial service could not. A story about what it means to lose someone who understood you, someone who saw past the image, someone who knew the person behind the performance. Elizabeth Taylor lost that when Michael Jackson died, and the world lost it when Elizabeth Taylor died, because friendships like theirs are rare, and the honesty they require is even rarer. If you made it this far, you understand something important: that grief does not have to be loud to be real, that love does not have to be public to be deep, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing. Elizabeth Taylor knew that. Michael Jackson knew that. And in their silence, in their private moments, in their late-night phone calls, they created something the world could not touch. A friendship that was theirs, and theirs alone. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and if this made you see silence differently, pass it along. Because stories like this remind us that we do not owe the world our pain. We do not owe strangers our tears. We owe them nothing, except perhaps the courage to draw a line and say, "This is mine, and I am keeping it